My name is Janice Smith, and I'm the director of the Spokane Piano Competition. I would like to thank you for joining me today as we present an informative interview with our 2021 judge, Dr. Yerin Kim. Yerin, thanks so much for taking time to speak with us today about the Spokane Piano Competition. And I'm sure our listeners would love to know a little bit about you, what brought you to Washington State, and particularly what brought you to Central Washington University.
Well, hi Janice. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to virtually meet you. I'm really looking forward to meeting you in person in the fall. To the listeners, my name is Yerin Kim. I'm a pianist. A little bit about myself. I was born in Seoul, South Korea. I did all my extensive early years training in Seoul, Korea. I went to arts middle school and a high school. And then I came over to the States to do college, grad school, and doctorate, and I ended up staying here. I got married. I have a family here. I'm married to a violinist, so my life evolves around music. It's not really a separation of profession and personal life, which is actually can be a quite wonderful thing if you like that. Yeah, and we just moved here. It's the first time actually living in Washington State. I visited a few times because we have some family here. But I came here for work and I like it. It was first started off as a visiting professor position at Central Washington University. It was during the pandemic that I accepted the job and we kind of temporarily moved out here. But after a term, they offered to change to a permanent position. So I'm here to stay. We moved out and we're just enjoying the mountains, enjoying the students, amazing colleagues. Yeah, it's just good. It's good to be surrounded by all the things that I like to do. I do love teaching. It was one of the things that I was able to reassess when pandemic hit. I think just like for all of us, that kind of a little bit of isolation and time gave us time to think a lot. And I realized that I really love teaching and playing, even if it was online. So I kind of jumped into it and here I am.
Well, good. We're so glad that you ended up where you're at. So I also look forward to meeting you in person, and I know the students will too. So if anyone would like more information about Dr. Yerin Kim, please check the Spokane Piano Competition website. And she also has her own website at yerinkim.com that you can hear her performances and learn a little bit more about her there too. Yerin, what has been your experience with competitions, and particularly those that are similar to the Spokane Piano Competition that are geared towards youth through high school age?
Well, I've judged a lot. When I was a student, when I was a young pianist, I've competed a lot in competitions too. I think it's certainly different competing versus when you're judging versus listening, as a parent. And I'm sure all the parents listening to your children performing I feel like that's the most nervous party, honestly, just in the audience. But I think I mentioned those three different groups because everybody gets something out of it, in my opinion. When you're competing, it's an opportunity to perform. It's an opportunity to try things out. It's an opportunity to meet other contestants. To meet other judges, to get a little bit of different perspectives on your performance and your repertoire. For me to judge, I don't know, my first competition that I judged for preschool students was actually when I was living in New York, and it was pretty high stake for the students because the winners got to perform in Carnegie Hall. A dear friend of mine was a director for it, so everybody worked really hard, and it was such a treat for me to listen to such high level playing from those little tiny hands to high school students. And it's especially fun for me because I get to hear and see from very young to right before college level, and it's just so much passion and talent. And I get out with like my hands numb because I'm writing comments, but it's always positive. I think I love meeting them afterwards, giving feedback, and I've done them in Indiana while I taught at University of Notre Dame, because we had a Indiana chapter festivals and competitions. And these are so crucial for music education and piano, for students to stay relevant and be able to realize that competition could be a positive thing. It's an opportunity, in my opinion. So.
Well, and that just takes us right into my next question is what would you list as the top reasons to enter a piano performance event? And there are events that are competitions, and then there are events that are adjudicator, they just receive comments, and of course that, even boils down to studio recitals and stuff. What would you say the top few reasons would be for students to participate in these types of things?
Well, I think personally, in my opinion, craftsmanship is what we go for. As musicians, as pianists, we learn such difficult skill sets. Instrument playing is not something you're just born with. You have to take lessons, you have to train yourself, you have to practice. And when you talk to, there's a bit of sportsmanship involved too, and then there's creativity. It's just a huge spectrum of things that you learn how to do. But at the end of that, you perform it. You get to share it with other people. You get to share it with the teachers that you crafted with. You get to share it with your supporters, your families and friends. And I think for me, that's a huge part of learning the instrument too, to be able to share what you feel through the music. And there's no really better way than to participate in these events. The medium, to be honest, in my opinion, is different. It offers different things. If you're a more competitive person, having that award factor might motivate you more. If you're more of like project oriented person, like I am, I love doing projects. My piano students are always asking, what's next? What are you thinking of? So if that's the thing, studio recitals, that's a great thing. But I think competitions specifically give you that extra boost of vitamin shots. There's a direct goal that's involved, and I really try to give specific but general but helpful comments to people that I hear through competitions, because we're all at the end of the day working towards that craftsmanship that we spend so much time and energy in. So I think it's a wonderful thing, and it is better than just practicing. It is better to go out there and perform. Yeah.
I totally agree with you. So, you've performed extensively as both an adult and a child. Do you have any advice for students to help them cope with stage fright and performance anxiety?
Great question. I don't think anybody's free from it. Even the greats, even the very top tier people, you talk to them and they're like, their nervousness is part of the performance too. But I think if you're able to channel that into a positive thing, because, actually everybody reacts differently. I studied psychology in undergrad as a double degree piano and psychology. And a big part of that was because I wanted to understand what goes in your head, emotion, and all that stuff when you're performing and practicing. And when you get nervous, when you get anxious, people have a fight or flight response, right? But if you're able to channel that into something that can actually enhance your performance, a little bit of that butterfly in your stomach, that can make your music be a little bit more alive, I actually have the opposite problem. I get very sleepy when I'm nervous. My body just kind of like overcompensates and I get so tired. So sometimes I'm like, should I drink coffee? I'm gonna fall asleep on stage, So when I get that extra little bit of tingle, it's so exciting for me. So I think if the contestants, if the students and all our musicians can find a way to think about how positive that can be, and use that energy to be a little bit more excited on stage, I think that's the best you can do. And it's easier said than done, I know, but also to focus on the music part of it. You do all amazing work in your practice rooms and lessons, trying to figure out the logistics of it, the technique, the repetitions. But when you're performing, I think you have to use your ears. The space you perform is going to be different from your practice room. If you have big audience, the reverb is going to be different. So you have to be able to train your ear how to adjust to that, adjust to the sound and tone around you. And if you focus on that, there's really actually not that much time to be nervous. The moment your ears are just, going wild trying to listen, then you just performed. You weren't concerned about how tight you feel or all the physical things. The moment you start thinking about that I think it kind of puts you into a tighter position. So my advice is to just listen on stage and focus on the output you're giving out there.
That's great advice. Thank you so much. Entrance into this Spokane piano competition receive numeric scores. And the four areas are interpretation of the composer's intent, rhythmic accuracy and integrity, technical mastery and physical ease, and the fourth one is sound quality, expression, and musical artistry. So as you look forward to judging this event, what will be some of the things that you will be listening and looking for?
Well, all of those things that you mentioned are great things. I think it's really important things. Those actually, it's great that it's divided into that, because those are the things that you should be thinking from the very beginning stages of learning a piece throughout the performance, throughout the whole timeline of your preparation. So if students can keep all those things in mind, even from the very beginning when they're learning a note. I often hear some students saying, well, I learned the notes now, so we're going to talk about musicality, right? And then we're going to talk about interpretation. They're a lot of times separated. And I think it's much better to start from the beginning, because, depending on the phrasing you want, you might choose a different fingering. Depending on an effect you want, you might choose a different setup. So everything, technique and musicality, is very integrated. And I like to see that when I see people perform. It is clear to me when I see performers have focused on the technical part and then put the makeup on afterwards. It shows on stage because your priority is very clear on stage. So those are the things that I look for, of how much of this wholesome integrated technique and musicality shows on stage. And also one thing that I think it's important is the score. I think you have to really understand what the composer's intention is. It's almost like coding and decoding. My father and my brother, they're all both in the tech business, so they talk about coding a lot, but it's actually very similar to what we do in music. You have to look at the score and their codes. Composers use these symbols and all these things that everybody agreed on to create their unique messages, and you as a musician have to decode them, figure out how to play it, and then recode, because that's where your interpretation comes. So you're using all the ingredients and the symbols that this original composer intended you to know and hear, and you have to be able to use that to make it into your own. But if you only use the notes and change out the rhythm or dynamics, that becomes a transcription. So I think it's very important to know how to interpret the style of the composers, to understand what his or her music is like, the timeline of it, so articulations of it. So I think it's actually very important to have a good score. So I recommend students to always consult their teachers to find good scores. It's really easy to find poor scores these days as well as good scores. Or text manuscripts are available, but heavily edited scores are also very easily available. So I think that would be the first step, to find a good score and really, really study it and understand it, not just the notes, but, it's like looking at somebody's diary. It's very personal and private. So I think, and that all shows in the performance too, of how much you took care of that. So those are the things, generalized things that I look forward to. And I think it's great that you have those categories, like I said, because those are very important things. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. Summer break is fast approaching, and there's a number of students who will go from regular weekly lessons to much more occasional, intermittent, and sporadic instruction. How do you advise those students and parents and teachers too to stay engaged, stay motivated, and continue with their musical growth and artistry?
Mhm. Um, well, it's a skill set, and I think consistency is the most important thing. Whether you know, whether you want to become a professional musician or whether you want to just develop your musicianship or whether or not it's just your passion, without that consistent training and practice, it just becomes a appreciation, but I think it has to be part of your daily system. The way how I learn language. English is my second language. My mother tongue is Korean because I was born and raised there. And when I first came to the States, I hated that I had an accent. I just couldn't stand it. So, I practiced just by myself, looking at the mirror, watching movies, Disney channels, and you start practicing and you just have to do it and every day. And I was so focused on piano and my schoolwork in Korea that I actually never took English seriously until I came to the States. And it wasn't planned. I didn't really think I was going to be end up here, living here, having a life here. So, but I realized, wow, it makes such a big difference to just, even if I fail, just to do it. The constant back and forth is what makes you better, I think. So it's the same thing with instrument. It's much harder to learn an instrument than learning a language because there's really no such thing as perfectioning something, right? And you always get better. There's always room to grow, which I think is so exciting because there's always somewhere to go, So I think consistency is key. So it's great to have a break. It's great to take a breath, especially after this year when everything was online and everybody feels probably needs a little bit of break. But music can be part of that. I personally think music can be part of that refreshment and personal growth. So I encourage parents, students, and teachers to keep that weekly lessons and weekly practice. Yeah.
Great. Thank you for that. And of course, we as a teacher always encourage our students to do that, and sometimes it works. And I think hopefully when you have an event like the competition coming up, that will also encourage students to stay more consistent and have music as their part of their daily summer life too. So
Yeah.
great.
And one other thing, if you take a break and come back, you notice that, I I lost that under my fingers, and you don't want to go back and redo it, So it's better to keep that up. Yeah.
Totally.
Mhm.
Well, thank you again, Dr. Kim, for joining me today and educating and encouraging the students, teachers, and parents to participate in the competition that's coming up this fall. It is the mission of the Spokane Piano Competition to provide a platform for pianists to advance their musical study and achieve artistic growth. And the 2021 Spokane Piano Competition, we're just really privileged to have you as our judge this year. And we're looking forward to working with you and getting your scores and comments. So if you have any final comments for us, sir.
Oh, I'm just really excited. I'm excited that, this event will happen, and I'm excited to hear, young students. There's nothing more energizing than listening to talented young musicians get up on stage and perform their hearts out. It's hard for me to grade because music should not be really graded, but I think it's important for all of us to know that it's at the end of the day, it's about that craftsmanship, and it's such a wonderful way to show how hard you've worked and just to share your talent and your time and your effort. So thank you so much for having me. I feel very, very honored to be asked. And, like I said, it's my first time living in Washington, so I'm excited to visit that site too. So it'll be fun for me too. I'm looking forward to it.
well, we'd say we really look forward to having you. And I would like to thank our audience today for listening. And please stay in touch as we'll be sending updates and registration reminders as we approach the event. If you're not already receiving our newsletters, just go to the Spokane Piano Competition website in the contact form and send one off to me, and we'll be sure to get you added to the mailing list. And we hope to see you at the Spokane Piano Competition, which will be November 2 through 6. And we hold it at the Steinway Piano Gallery in the Spokane Valley. So we hope to see you there. And Dr. Kim, thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you. Good to meet you. Good to talk to you.